Hi, everyone. So this is the 5th meeting of the City Seal Task Force. We have a quorum of 6 people, so we can go ahead and get started. Yes, so I think we can just dive right into the agenda. So per usual, I'll just do roll call for Aditi. So I'll start with you, Aditi. You're present. Suzanne.
Yep, present.
Pucci is not here yet. I haven't heard from her. Michael Fiener said Dr. Michael Fiener said he won't be able to make it today. Um, so yeah, I guess we'll get to that point in the agenda, but we'll have to continue his presentation to next meeting. VJ,
Here.
Rachel,
Here.
Alphonse,
Present.
and Carly is away until August. She let me know, so she'll rejoin these meetings. She's currently teaching abroad. And Eileen is not able to make it today. So, okay. Great. So the next item on the agenda. Oh, I remember that's what I was thinking about. We need to turn on the AI companion for the minutes. So let me do that right now. It's IT did turn it on for us. Let me see if it works. I knew I was forgetting something. Is that working? Did you see a notification around that?
So it has closed caption is available, but I don't think
It's been enabled.
Yeah.
It's been
So
enabled? Okay,
If you
great.
look up in the upper right-hand corner, there's like a flashing star.
Okay, yeah. So this is my first time using it in a public meeting, so I guess we'll just have to test it out. I'm assuming that that's all you have to do for it to make a summary, right?
And once the meeting ends, it takes a few minutes, but then it sends it to you in your email.
Great.
So
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect. Yes. So with that, just remind me if I forget to turn it on. Let's just to hold me collectively accountable because I need to turn on the recording and the AI companion for each meeting now. Okay, perfect. So the next thing is to approve previous meeting minutes. So the May minutes were continued to this meeting, and so we have 2 minutes to approve the May 19th meeting minutes as well as the June 2nd meeting minutes. So I'm opening up the floor for discussion on that. Go ahead, BJ.
Yeah, I just wanted to check with Aditi and Rahina, you as well. I'd sent an update to the minutes last Friday along with my presentation, just to be included into my update to be included into these May meetings, I guess, as my summary.
Yeah, perfect. So I think to my knowledge, those have been incorporated. I don't have any changes.
Yeah, I haven't updated I'll send out the agenda this week with today's meetings agenda, and you can approve it with VJ or stuff included in the meeting minutes, I think.
Okay. So
For June.
with that, can we approve the May meetings with VJ's changes? Perfect. So can somebody enter a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Perfect. And all those in favor raise hands. Okay, so that's for the May meeting minutes. And now for June 2nd. I don't think I had any changes, so I think they look good as is for me. Did anybody have any changes? Perfect.
Nope,
So great. So then can somebody make a motion to approve June 2nd minutes?
I make a motion.
Second.
All those in favor raise hand. Great. Alphonse, are you abstaining or?
Yeah, I was not present for June 2nd, so I'm just going to abstain.
Okay, great. So Dee Dee, just make a note of that, yeah, great. All right, so that takes care of that. And so very briefly, for our conversation in a previous meeting, I just want to check in on our norms or values every few meetings. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to do that. So just give me a second. Okay. Perfect. So can somebody can I get a volunteer to read the values and somebody to read the norms?
I can do the values. So our shared values here are to be equity, inclusion, transparency, empathy, respecting others, and integrity.
Yeah, and these are the values that we care the most about as a group. Perfect. Thank you, VJ. And norms?
I can read them. So norms are shared behaviors. Assume good intent, be mindful of impact, own your impact. Don't take it personally. People speak in drafts and drafts are messy. Discuss what, not why. Be specific, be helpful. Let people find their way to their points. Show a willingness to learn, listen with intent to understand. Using I statements, speaking from your own experience, and leaving space for feelings.
Perfect. So I was actually at a professional development training this weekend, and again, they emphasize the importance for group agreements. So it's interesting because sometimes it can feel a little bit like, oh, like we've done this, but like it is a best practice for group decisions, kind of like how Carly was speaking to that in a previous meeting. So it was just a good reminder that there's a reason that uh, groups and committees and just any decision-making entities have these, right? Because it's sort of like a guiding light for discussions, and it is a best practice for yeah, for again for a lot of groups and decision-making entities. Okay, so with that we can move on, or unless there's any further discussion on that. Great. We can move on. I'm not sharing my screen anymore, right?
No.
Great. Okay, so I do have an update on the drive for the task force materials. If you haven't checked your email in the last 30 minutes, then you didn't get this, but I just sent the link for the shared drive. So IT sent it to me today. So that has been published. So the task force should have edit access to it through SharePoint. So it will only work, the link will only work through your salem.com emails. It won't work through your personal emails. Just make a note of that. So if it doesn't work for you, just make sure you're switching to your salem.com email accounts and then try it. And if you can't access it through your salem.com emails for whatever reason, just let me know so I can have IT look at that. Alphonse.
Thank you, Alina. So I was able to get in no problem. I didn't try to edit anything, but I did have access to the drive and saw that the different category folders there. So, and at least theoretically, it should work.
Perfect. Great. I'm so happy to hear that. And I guess let's just spend a little bit of time just talking about how we want to organize the drive. I did take the liberty to just create some folders based on what I remember from previous conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so far, this is what you should see when you open the link. So there's 3 folders as of now. So there's one for meeting presentations, and then optional reading and required reading, right? So pretty self-explanatory. If anybody thinks that there are better ways to word or title the folders, please feel free to rename them. Those are just the names that I kind of thought made sense. And so far the only things, yeah, the only items that I've uploaded are the meeting presentations that I've personally shown from my screen in previous meetings. Ideally, they should have the exact dates, so I'll just add that once I go back and reference my notes. I didn't know the meeting dates off the top of my head, just for clarity. And Suzanne's presentation is already in there because I had it on my drive. So Suzanne, I took care of that. So VJ, when you have a chance, just upload yours. And Rachel, I believe you're presenting today, so whenever you have a chance, just upload your own presentation to this drive, to this folder. And of course, just upload any required reading that you believe is relevant for the task force into that folder, as well as the optional reading. Yeah, does anybody have any thoughts on what I've done so far? Any comments?
I think it's a good start. I don't know what other folders we would put in there at the moment, but maybe we'll come across some as we continue on. But I think that essentially would catch most things that we'd want to share out.
I would add, so I love the reading, although part of me kind of bristles at the word required. But there could be a folder for images, maybe?
Sure.
Any kind of images that we find, and that, because a lot of those images that I showed in my presentation, I had in a folder. And there's like 50 images in that folder, a lot that I left out. So we might find things along our days, that we might want to include that are just pictorial, because I think I said this before, the seal is pictorial. It's an image, it's an illustration, it's a piece of artwork. And so there's a lot of content and concepts behind it, but I think pictures are important in this exploration.
I'd recommend too, if we're going to put photos in, to provide some context as to why they would be in there. Pictures speak 1,000 words, right? So I imagine there'd be something we'd be putting in there with an intent, but wanting to show why it's there.
I agree. And it doesn't have to be a lengthy required reading, like volume of, so just a sentence or two sometimes is enough.
And a content warning.
Right, Alphonse, because the ones I left out, I don't know if I'd put in a lot of the ones I left out because they're so super offensive. And what I was going for,
Even the ones that were included were super offensive. So
they were offensive too, but they were more
subtle,
and that a lot of people don't see as offensive. I have ones that everybody, no matter who, you put a hook out on the street and drag somebody in, they'll see it's offensive. I mean, it's highly offensive.
Yeah, I just one logistical question. If we are uploading images to a folder, typically you'll only see the image itself, like the file, as well as the name of the file. So I don't think there's, well, I guess it's a question. Let me frame it as a question. How do we give the context of, how do we give the additional context that goes with the image?
I initially off the top, I would imagine if it's a folder of images, within that folder would be, maybe a notepad document that just describes 1 or 2 sentences as to why. But if it's an individual image, you're right, Rahina, that might cause some, I guess you'd also try to attach a notepad document to it, but it might get lost because they're not tied together. I mean, yeah, I guess that is sort of a.
I mean,
Well, far be it from me to, because I'm such a cyber technology peasant, but what I do is just drag the photo to a in my, I have a Mac, so it's not a Word doc. It's whatever they call Met Pages, I guess, is the Word program. And then I can type into it. So I just drag it in there, paste it down, and you can type all around it, above it, under it, either
Okay,
side.
so then we can do that. So, um, put it into a Word document, copy and paste it into a Word document, and then add whatever the context is, like why you're showing this image, what it represents, and maybe, yeah, and maybe who is adding it, right? Like Suzanne, if you're adding it, that might be relevant.
Well, can I say one more thing is these are all going to be accessible to the public, right? They can look at it.
Correct.
So maybe save it as a PDF. So people
Yes.
who couldn't open a Microsoft Word document, uh, anybody can open a PDF. So it's just really easy to save documents as a PDF, and then everybody can look at everything.
So that's a very good point, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's just make it a practice to save everything in PDF format for that reason. Okay, great. So I think, yeah, that covers that agenda item. Does anybody have any other comments? Thoughts? Okay, great. So I'm gonna move on then. Yes, so last meeting we talked a lot about public engagement strategy, and we did publicly announce the the input form. We did publish it in English and Spanish on the website. So before we get to that, there were a few follow-up things that I wanted to cover from that meeting. So in regards to tabling, um, I did get a hold of Kylie regarding from Salem Main Street regarding the farmers market. And we do have some dates that we would just need to cover, but essentially we have one date each month from now until September. So I need to pull up that email, but that's the first thing. So more on that in a second. North Shore Pride, I did email Hope about that, and unfortunately, yeah, there's already a wait list, so we weren't able to get a table for that, and there is a fee associated, so that doesn't appear to be an option for us at this time. Fiesta in La Calle was last weekend, and unfortunately, we didn't get the it was just too quick of a turnaround time, so I was not able to get the printouts like I wanted to there. Rachel and I did communicate around getting the infographic, but there just wasn't enough time for me to translate it because it was so last minute, and I didn't feel I didn't feel comfortable not having the Spanish version, so I kind of just made the decision to skip that event. And Jeremy from the mayor's office let me know that there's a big event, there's a big community outreach event called Touch a Truck on August 3rd. So that's another one that I have on my radar to have a table at and talk to people about what we've been doing. Alphonse, go ahead.
Thank you, Hina. Are there any groups from the city at all tabling at Pride that we might be able to partner with?
I asked that very question to Hope and I didn't hear back.
Yeah. um, Hope might be in the deep in the weeds of prep. Can we ask around? The health department might have something.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to think of who generally shows up at Pride for tabling. Um,
yes. So it would typically be sustainability, health.
yep.
So yes, that's a good point. Um, yes, and I'll ask around internally. Let me just write myself a note, sorry.
I mean, the coalition is not tabling this year. Otherwise I'd just say, share with us, but
Mm-hmm.
Regina,
Yeah,
how
that's a
much
good
is the
point.
fee?
I can't remember off the top of my
Five
head.
dollars? I'll pay.
500.
Oh,
No, is it that high?
It's
No.
between 300 to 500. It's a lot.
wow.
The tabling? Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
it's partly it's a fundraiser
Right.
for them to be able to host the
It's
events,
a
right?
vendor fee.
Yeah.
So it's the assumption that you're going to be making that back and then some.
Yeah, I'm looking at her emails and see if I can find that information. Yeah. Um, yeah, she actually didn't mention the price in her response, so I don't know what the cost is.
I can look that up while we're going.
Okay. Great. So let me open up the information around the farmers market so we can get that sorted. I'm sorry, it's just my email is very difficult to sort through. Just give me 1 second.
It kind of a moot point what the vendor registration fee is because there, like Regina said, there's a wait list. So it's not even available on the website right now. But it is at least a few $100s.
I can't find it. Hold on, just give me I'm sorry. Okay, here it is. Okay, so the June date is June 26th. And so keep in mind that this is from 3 to 7, is that right? 3 to 7?
The
I
date
think
for Pride?
that's no for the farmers market.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Sorry, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so I think it's I'll confirm via email, but I'm almost certain it's 3 to 7 on Thursdays. So June 26th. And then in July, it's July 17th, August 21st, and September 25th. So does anybody have any preference for which dates they prefer to table?
Can you please repeat the dates?
Yeah, so June 26th, and reminder that these are all Thursdays. These are all farmers market Thursdays. June 26th, July 17th, August 21st, and September 25th.
I
I
can
can do the
do
20.
I can do July.
I could do July also.
Okay. Yeah, and so it's ideal if we have 2 people cover the entire time.
I don't want to take us on a detour, but I was going to ask you, I have it on my list to ask you, um, if something like that would be an event where we could invite the adjunct members of the task force to come share also.
Yes. Mhm.
I
I
can
think we've
do
got a lot
tomorrow.
of talent there and a lot of credentials and a lot of good voices, and um, you know, the next generation of Salem residents and politicos, and it would be good to have them come and be able to offer some of what they have to share.
Certainly, yes. Absolutely. And I need to email them about the listening session. Or Rachel, is that something that you can potentially help me with? Just inviting just making sure that an intentional invite goes out to, um, what are we calling them? The adjunct, they're not the adjunct
I said
members, but
adjunct,
that's,
but
you
but
said adjunct
they kind of
Associate.
are the adjunct. That's
associate. Yeah, the
associate.
associate members. Thank you.
There's 4 of
And
them, right? Is that, or am I
yes.
wrong? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can, do you want to be CC'd? Does everyone want to be CC'd, or are we like tired of that? No, should I just directly, you know what I mean? Like we all gave each other's emails.
I'm fine with not being.
Yeah, okay,
Just, yeah,
great.
yeah,
I'll just email
exactly.
the 4 of them and CC you, Regina, and then we'll just see if they're available for any of those dates.
Perfect. And yeah, and also for the listening session and anything coming up
Yes,
that's
yes,
relevant. Because we
absolutely. We just have the
definitely want them.
one
Yeah, yeah.
so far.
I
Okay.
guess I mean what I mean by that is like anything else that we have coming up that's relevant.
Okay.
Did you say something, Alphonse? Okay. Great. Okay, so Rachel and Suzanne are signed up for July.
I can do August.
I could also
Okay.
do August.
Okay, great. So VJ and Aditi for August. I can do June 26th. No problem. We have September open. I guess so Michael can't table because he's he's in Japan, so I'm assuming he won't be able to do that. So we can potentially just send an email out and just ask for coverage the remaining dates.
We could maybe get him on Zoom.
Yes, that'd be fun to have a little laptop sitting right there with him.
Yeah, I don't, that seems like,
No, I'm liking this idea. So Michael and I will take September over Zoom.
I love it. We'll figure.
I
Provide
don't,
max headroom.
well, but no, because like that doesn't make what are we gonna do? Have a laptop at the farmer's market? Like, no.
Exactly.
Exactly. What are you trying to? Isn't this AI technology?
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna say that that's not a good idea. So I'm guessing I'll just send out an email and people can sign up for the remaining dates based on what works for them. But I appreciate the willingness to be flexible. Okay, so I think that takes care of that. And we'll also have to figure out the Touch a Truck event. But I'll just get an email going about that instead.
Could I ask what is the Touch a Truck event?
It sounds like the community thing that they do every year on the common with the fire trucks and the police.
Yes, that sounds right.
Like the what is it? The first responders event. I think is what
That
they
sounds
call it in
right.
the past.
I've never been to it, so Jeremy just told me like that's a very popular community engagement
It sounds
event.
like it's for kids a little bit, is it?
Well, there's yes and no. There's food trucks. It's there's some youth basketball. There's a lot that goes on. So it's family oriented, I guess is the best way to put it.
Oh, and it's at the Salem Willows.
Oh, the Willows. Oh, okay, not the common. Oh,
Oh
probably.
wait. Um, I'm not finding any information online. That was for a previous event, but I do remember, excuse me, I do remember Jeremy mentioning something about the Willows, so I do think that's accurate. But let me gather more information, put it in an email, and then we can be more yeah, we can be more certain about what we're signing up for. Okay. And then, oh yes, so the listening session, just moving on to from the tabling events to the listening session, we did change the date because there was a conflict, and apparently there was another listening session scheduled that same evening for the Food Policy Council. So I just figured we would not want to host another city-related listening session on that same day. So we moved it to July 14th at 7 p.m. So everybody, please make sure that that's accurately reflected on your calendar. I did update our calendar invite, but just make sure that you have the right date. I did get a little bit more information from Beth, the city solicitor. Apparently the way it would work is there wouldn't be a sign up ahead of time. It would purely be people raising their hands, and then we promote them to panelists, let them speak, and then we'll just go to the next person. And that's the way that it works.
But we can limit the time if need be, if a ton of people are there, type of thing.
Yes. But that would be up to us to manage that. So maybe, yeah, maybe there can be a timekeeper, or I guess that will have to be a decision that we collectively make that day.
So we'd be responsible if someone is talking for 15 minutes of like cutting their mic off.
Yeah, I think we'll be in a situation where we'll have to interrupt them and say, "Oh, we have to move on to the next person. Thank you so much for sharing your feedback. We have to move on," type of thing.
And,
Good.
and why is the the 5 minute or 3 minute rule being not being looked at?
So it's not that we haven't, like, what I don't think we've made one decision or another. It's just the way that I think we talked about doing it from the previous meeting was that we would decide based on how many people show up, right? But I think we just said, like, as a general guidance, limit it to I think we said 4 minutes. Is that right, Rachel? I'd have to look back, but yeah, I think we said like limit it to 4 minutes, just so that people don't show up thinking like, oh, I'm gonna speak for half an hour, right?
Do
Um,
you know so one of the things that has surprised me, I will say, is the volume of feedback forms that we've gotten. So what do we do in the case that 265 people show up?
You limit them to 4 minutes apiece, and then you get through what you can. You can't hear everybody. It's
Right.
just it's
Mhm.
impossible. One thing I suggest, if it's going to be over Zoom, is that you have a separate attendee be the timekeeper, so that their screen will be a clock that counts down how much time each person has to speak. That way, they know there's no surprises. So, like one of the little Brady Bunch windows here will be like 4 minutes, and then it's 3:50, and it'll just count down, so people can view that as they're speaking.
Oh,
And
I
that
like that. And
How do
maybe
you
we can
do
play
that?
music like at the Oscar Awards after you hit the 0
come out with the gong show, come out with the hook. Um,
Right.
so the way to do that would be have someone dial in and share their screen on a stop on a for the on their computer. They'll have like a stopwatch, and they share their screen of that stopwatch, and that
Ah,
would
clever. Okay, I'll figure out a way to do that. Maybe I can have like another staff member from the city do that. Um, yes, okay, that's a good idea. Okay. Yes, so again, the way that it will work is we will show up on July 14th over Zoom at 7 p.m. And then people will raise their hands on the webinar feature, and we'll let them speak in the order that the hands appear. And then we'll put a timer.
Mhm.
And whoever we get to in an hour is basically who gets to speak.
And
Okay.
for the understanding for the public too, I'm just, wanting to talk about it in each meeting. We're not allowed to discuss or respond to these comments. So this is a truly a listening session. So I just don't want people coming thinking they're going to have a deep conversation back and forth and then, be surprised when we're like, okay, thank you.
Yes, and I'll
But
even have a slide that maybe I can show at the beginning, just stating that to make it super clear.
right, and they can still come talk to us at like a, the farmer's market or whatever it is.
Mhm. Okay, perfect.
I think even the like way you broadcast or advertise it and the Zoom link and everything, if it can align to say listening session, that would go over like just as many repetitions of that will help with that too. Yeah.
Yes, that's a good point. Okay. Okay. Moving on to just a quick update from last meeting. I did share the idea about having a task force member. Yeah, just share what we've been up to at the Mayor's Compass podcast. And they're gonna reach back out to us, but yeah, they're open to the idea. So that is in the works, and we'll see what happens. And I nominated Rachel, so I took the liberty of putting her name forward,
I
and
don't mind,
hopefully
it's
she
fine.
accepts.
I mean, I'd also be happy to do with like someone else if another member wants to come. I feel like it's always nice on a podcast when there's like,
Two people, yeah,
it's
that's a
like
good
two
point.
people and an interviewer. So, it doesn't have to just be like, I think we all have different opinions and perspectives about what's happening. Just on like very simple things. We're like, what just happened? So feel free
Perfect.
to
So if
come.
this does materialize, we can then make a more formal decision. But yes, I think having two task force members would be great. Mhm.
Awesome.
Okay. Anything else before we move on these topics? Great. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to have a more in-depth discussion around the City Seal public feedback form. So just to give everybody context, especially anybody watching, so we published the feedback form on the website following the last meeting. We published it in English and Spanish. And then a few days after we published it, we announced it formally through a press release. So that means it went on the city website as well as the city social media. So I think primarily Facebook. I didn't see it anywhere else. But maybe it did go out through Instagram. I just didn't see it personally. That's just the one I saw. And as of now, we have received 322 responses. So there's been quite a bit of feedback. And I would like to open up the floor for discussion. Alphonse and then Didi.
Thank you, Nina. Has IT been able to fix the issue where we cannot sorry, using I statements. I tried this afternoon to look at some of the feedback forms and I still cannot access them.
I'm having the same
So-
issue.
Me
Yeah.
So
So, I mean,
I did send an email to IT immediately. I haven't received a follow-up, so I'll just keep nudging them. You should be able to view it. I don't know why you can't view the responses. VJ, I did see that you were able to access the document, so again, I'm not sure why some of us can view it and others can't. I think it's just an IT related issue.
So I will say, and Alphonse, let me know if this is where you where you got that sort of blockage of not being able to go forward. Whenever we get an email about someone submitted a new response and you click on that, that I don't have access to. That takes me to a page where it says IT hasn't authorized so and so
Yes.
user.
Yeah.
However, Rahina, you sent around a spreadsheet of the responses that I believe gets just continually updated, and I've always gone back to that to read them. Now I realize for all of us, it might be kind of buried in a lot of the responses that we've gotten, but I do know that's how I've been able to access it was through
Oh,
Yeah,
let me
that's
forward
that's a
that.
different animal.
Yeah, let me forward that email and maybe we can collectively check if that spreadsheet links work for people. So just give me 1 second.
So Regina, there, VJ touched on something that was my experience. Is there a way that we can just have that spreadsheet and not the 360 emails in our, because the note with that link in it, there's all this other email that gets buried in that long list of 360 emails. So that
Yeah,
function is
so
actually really,
I can turn that setting off. I kind of don't want to because once this slows down, it would be good for us to get a notification when we do get a new response. Because suppose, like what I would recommend is what I personally did is I just have them, I set up a rule, like an email rule,
Mhm. Yeah.
where I have them go into a folder as they come in. So I don't even see them on my general inbox. I just see them in a folder and I see like, oh, I have like right now I have 236 unread emails in that folder. So that means I haven't looked at 236 of them, Um, and then you can see oh, hi, Dakota, you're on the panelist link. Good to
I
see
do
you
got
though.
that.
Yeah.
so being the cyber peasant, I haven't figured out how to do that to make it all go to a folder. So I'll go in there and try that. But I think if I can now, and I'll go back and try to find the spreadsheet. Does it do them from the newest to the oldest or the oldest to the newest? Like what, how does it organize?
Newest to the oldest.
It goes the newest to the oldest?
Newest to the oldest, yeah, because
Okay.
the response one is the top response on the spreadsheet. And then as you scroll down, you see the most recent ones.
Oh, wait, so the most recent are at the bottom and
The most recent are at the bottom, yeah. And I
then
was just able to, I'm able to, similar to Vijay, I'm able to open the spreadsheet, but I'm unable to access the forms directly.
okay.
Um,
I can get the spreadsheet. Unfortunately, I don't want the spreadsheet. I want to look at each individual. Like this, the spreadsheet only tells me so much. I can get more from the actual response.
Well,
But
no, the spreadsheet
Spreadsheet is just a
is
copy and paste of the responses, right?
exactly
Yeah.
yeah. So everything on the form is on the spreadsheet, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like a
can,
literal copy paste, it looks like, from the way the responses, like including the time it took for someone to complete responding to a thing.
oh yes. So I guess you do get a little bit more information.
Yeah.
I can't. Oh, this is so frustrating. My searching through my email is a nightmare.
I need to reset my password with
You
IT,
sent it
so
on
I can't.
the first time you sent it, Regina, was on the 7th of June. Sorry, Rachel.
Thank you for
No, no,
telling
no.
me
I'm just
Oh,
like
it's
I
on
can't
June,
look
so
at what
it's
you're
June
looking at.
7th?
June 7th was the first time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I got one, but I couldn't open them then either.
Um, I can't find it, you all. I'm
If I
sorry.
can, if I can find it real quick, I'll just forward it along to everyone.
Yes, if, please,
Yeah.
because I'm just digging through email and it's not coming up.
No
Okay.
problem.
Yes, but please try the spreadsheet link. And thank you to whoever made it easier to read. I think that might have been you, VJ.
Oh yeah, wrapping the text was a huge. I mean, yeah,
Oh
I was doing
yeah.
it on my phone and it was impossible.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
That would
problem.
help a lot. I haven't looked at it since the first iteration. I'm like, no, there's no way. There's no way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that should have worked out. But
I had a follow-up about input form. I had a follow-up question. How many of these responses do we know are unique responses by unique individuals? Is there any way to know that information just from a data-driven point? You know, like,
Yeah, so that is something we need to talk about.
Right.
Um, I I have a meeting pending with IT to talk about this. On JotForm, which I have used in the past, there is a way to check IP addresses. I don't know if you can do that on Microsoft Forms. So I'm going to be checking in with IT around that. I will say that we received more than 100 responses before the official press release went out. And so I personally know just a couple of people who were some of the first to fill out the spreadsheet and shared that information with us, because keep in mind that we made it anonymous. So like we made the option to remain anonymous. Yeah, we made it optional for you to share your email and name, right? But some people did share their name and email, and I knew some of the people who submitted some responses. So I checked in with some of them and I said, hey, how did you hear about the form since the press release hadn't gone out? And they told me that it had been shared on some online forums. So just kind of making everybody aware of that the form was shared on some forums before the official press announcement. And so uh we did we did get the first 100 or so responses from the specific audiences in those forums.
Yeah. There was a point in time where we were getting a response every 3 to 5 minutes, like clockwork.
That's what I was going to say, Alphonse. I think what
yeah.
was not noteworthy about that is that first tranche of responses were mostly sent 2 to 3 minutes apart. That's why I would be interested about the uniqueness of the
Mhm.
of each response.
Yeah, and it's hard to know if we had a form flooding situation, because there are a lot of responses that are unique and a lot of people did identify themselves through their name and email, right? You can see that on the spreadsheet. But again, I think there are some responses that look really similar, right? Like they say almost the exact same thing. Um, and it would be pretty easy for somebody to just even though I did turn on a setting for to not be able to submit multiple responses, like I think it's pretty easy to go around that if you're tech savvy.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things I'd point out is that that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm in the Mass Teachers Association, the union for the mass teachers. And so whenever the State House is going to vote on something that we have a stake in, they send out an email saying, here are the 6 talking points we want you to cover in your email. And they even have a cut and paste if you don't feel like writing anything that you can paste into your email that says the same 6 talking points. So I believe that the people that would say the same thing, maybe sharing the same language, are still behind their opinions, so that they shouldn't be discounted just because they all have the same language in them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So all of this to say, I think it's too early to know if it's a form flooding situation. Like, I'll check with IT if there's a way to verify, but I think, like, let's just take these responses at face value. And something that is very much worth noting is that we have received 0 responses in Spanish. And we know that 15% or more of the population in Salem is Spanish speaking, including a huge portion of the Salem public school population. So I want that reflected in the minutes because I think that's hugely important, and I want to make sure that that's captured.
And Regina, I agree. Is there a way to, that's because I'm disappointed we weren't able to go to the event last week because I'd like to reach out to that community. I think there'll be a lot of opinions there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we have the form, and I know we talked about, somewhat jokingly, but at this point, I don't know if it is a joke. I think it might be more serious than not, printing them out and just pasting them all over telephone poles and whatnot, just with a QR code saying, hey, here's a form that you can give your input on. Doesn't have to be complicated. It's just here it is. Because we're entirely reliant upon these digital platforms to get the word out. And, we're all aware of algorithms. We're all aware of targeting and all this kind of such. And, so if, we don't have control over that, but what do we have control over as far as getting it in front of or in the places that, we feel would be important to? It's sort of a tactile, Luddite way, for lack of a better term, to do that. So maybe is that an option? Could we not just do that?
I mean, I think we absolutely should, but we should also like follow up with that with like, yeah, just community engagement. Because I think that, I don't know about you, but I often see those flyers where it's like guitar lessons with Bob. It's like, I don't ever.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? There are a lot of junky flyers. So I think it's important to just like, and I also just think that as well, it's important to show our faces and to make an effort with people on a human level. But I agree completely that we have to move it outside of the totally digital sphere.
I think my initial comment about the input forms is like, so most of the responses, from us, from a very like superficial glance, or even if someone is not in support of the view that I personally would hold about this deal, are pretty straightforward, like history, like making a case for history. But then there are a few responses in the middle of it that are deeply offensive, transphobic. I just don't understand the value. And I think that the anonymity piece is really encouraging of such responses. That is just not okay. You can say what you feel about the seal, but I'm sure like response number 80, I don't know if someone's read that response. It is so disturbing. I am
Yeah.
Why would anyone use their time
I'm
to
writing this down. It was number 80, you say?
It is number, yeah,
Are we allowed to skip some?
sorry, it's response number 81. It's 80 on the columns, or on the row. It's row number 80 or response number 81. I'm just so disturbed. I feel like this human needs help more than it's like, how can you say this kind of stuff publicly?
Oh, that's really not okay.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's the problem with the anonymity. That's going to be the problem with internet responses in general. There's no one on the other side for them to see the reaction, so it gives full.
Yeah, and that's why I agree. I think that like more in person, more real time, perhaps
Would it be a
engagement
good
might
idea to
help.
have the feedback forms at our table at the farmer's market?
Yes, I mean, yeah, that was the idea, was that we would have the infographic with a QR code in English and Spanish to the public input form. And I think let's think about this as a tool, right? Like, this is one tool to collect public feedback. We are also doing all these other things to collect input, right? We're doing the listening sessions. We're trying to do more tabling events, like VJ just suggested, to post them around the city, right? Like I think the more effort we put into getting the word out in many different ways, the better. Because one thing that I'm immediately noticing is that, yes, it's very telling to me that we have 322 responses from certain forums, right? Like, or not entirely exclusively from certain forums, but like, that are very heavy from like specific places in the internet, right? And we have 0 responses in Spanish when we know that demographically we have a huge Spanish speaking population. And that immediately tells me we're not reaching the school district, right? So again, these are the equity issues that we've talked about before. Like, who has access to this information? Who is checking the meetings, right? And who is paying attention to this topic? This is not necessarily reflective of the entire city's opinion as a whole, right? Okay.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna say that, as we've discussed, it's a long process and we will have another. I think at some point we need to kind of reset the forum or like be like, okay, we had our first responses, and then 6 months from now, after people have hopefully been on this educational journey with us, we'll do another forum, right? And I think so. It's that temperature taking. And yeah, and maybe then at that moment we can talk about how can we, I don't know, do we want to collect more information? For example, are these people all citizens of Salem? Like, I don't know. I mean, no one does. So I think we just have to talk about that more. And again, it's like it feels like there's so many steps of collecting data that we shouldn't feel discouraged by this beginning.
Well, something that I would share, and I'm not on, for the record, I'm not on social media and I never have been. I'm the original member of the Facebook resistance. But a friend shared one of those posts that Regina's talking about that went out before the official release of the form. And someone on there posted that encouraging people to send in as many forms as they want, and that they don't have to be from Salem. They don't have to be Salem people. So I think it would be good to have some identifying factor in there without a negative connotation to it, but like, are you from Salem? Um, and then also the number of unique responses, like Regina was saying, because I think it's clear that that was a happening thing there.
But also I want to just say, you know, and it's like I understand everyone has a lot of feelings and they want to have their voices heard, and we are listening, but it's not like no one's voting on this. At the end of the day, the only people who are voting are the city councilors. They can vote for their city councilors and all that, but flooding the form, creating an overwhelming, even if we get like 90% of the responses say that they don't want us to change the city seal, it's like it's not a vote, right? It's just we're trying to get some information. So I don't know, maybe that is like helps us to kind of as well not take it so intensely.
Well, and as a follow-up to that, can people confirm that they're able to open the spreadsheet?
Oh yeah, I sent it around a few minutes ago. I don't know if
I can
people checked
open
it.
it.
I need to get into my email, but I'll
Okay.
contact IT
I'm
tomorrow.
looking at it right now. Yeah.
Okay. Great. So it sounds like people can't access the forms, but they can access the spreadsheet. So that's the same information. And I guess just to summarize, because the forms platform gives you kind of like an overview. We've gotten, again, 322 responses so far. And most of them are from Salem residents, 288. So some of the street, so we gave people the option to let us know where in the city they're located. And a lot of the responses are just on the map here that I'm seeing, like the word map, are from Federal Street, Bentley Street, Lafayette Street, Boardman Street. So I don't know if that's relevant to folks. How familiar are you with the current city seal? 263 people say that they're very familiar, so that they know the history. And we have, do you believe City of Salem should consider changing the city seal? We have 19 unsure, 260 say no, 43 say yes. And something that I will say is coming up again and again as I look through the responses, and as I've been looking through the responses, is that the people who don't want to change the seal, I think the underlying interest is that they see it as changing history, right? And I do think there's a way for us to talk about it in a way where it's like uh, a lot of what we've been saying is also around the same themes. So I do feel like there's like underlying shared interests around like but we want to preserve um the history, right? Feel that this matters. I think the the point of disagreement is around like the figure, right? So I think some of the feedback that I've been thinking about is like, well, I don't I think part of the dialogue is like, how can we preserve what is important to people? And I think there's a way to do that, just like we've discussed in previous meetings. Like there's a way to honor the maritime history, there's a way to honor Salem's connection to Asia, without necessarily having a depiction that is offensive, right? And there are people who are reflecting on the fact that a lot of towns are revisiting their imagery and updating it, and they want us to do the same. So I'll stop there.
Well,
Alphonse.
and a lot of those
Thank you.
towns, I did some little bit of research on the towns that are, because not only are the towns, the Massachusetts state seal and flag is also being changed. It's a done deal. They are going through with it. Um, and all of them, every single, there's like seven of them. Uh, they're replacing it exactly like you're saying, Regina, with things that it's about their history, but that's not with a figure in it. So one of them was replacing it with their city hall, a picture of their city hall. The Natick had the bridge, uh, or images of nature. There was one where they have a river running through their town. I'll put these together and send them to the committee. They have a river running through their town, and they took the Native Americans out, and it's all the river, the beautiful river with pine trees and stuff. And I think I've always felt this about the seal. I love that image. It's beautiful. And imagining it without the figure in the center and something else is really easy. You can keep all the ribbons and the beautiful typography and the beautiful analogous color palette and put a beautiful pepper plants growing in Sumatra with the and the foliage and everything that's indigenous to Sumatra, and it'll be just as beautiful and just as historic. And it's the figure and that's what all the other towns did was they had figures and they removed them, and that's what happened. That's what's happening with the mass flag is they're taking the Native American off and coming up with something else.
Alphonse, go ahead.
Thank you, Regina. So, uh, I'm putting this out there now. I was gonna wait till the end of the meeting. I'm putting that out there now. This is my last meeting. I'm leaving Salem So this is my last meeting, and so I'm going to say some things that need to be said about this. This is the same thing as the rebel flag. When the top people talk about history and heritage and not hate, um, if if a group of a group of people from a protected class say something is offensive, people outside that group don't get to say no. What they should be saying is, I'm sorry, I did not realize that. How can we help? And at the end of the day, when the first pushback is this vitriol that we're getting, this anger, oh, it's history, without trying to understand why someone might find it offensive, not understanding the other side of history. Like let's look at who are the only people to be barred entry to the United States. The Chinese. There was a law, the Chinese Exclusion Act. So I take that into consideration when someone from the AAPI community tells me that this depiction is offensive. I mean, there's all sorts of instances of bias against the AAPI community that are not taken into consideration. And to dig in your, I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for the task force, but to dig in your heels when there is pain caused to a community and saying, "Oh no, that pain doesn't exist. I'm sorry, it's racist, and I'm tired of it." Uh, it needs to be said. It needs to be called out. I'm leaving, so people can't say kick me off the task force. I'm leaving anyway. So happy birthday to everybody out there hating. But this is the same thing as the rebel flag. Heritage, not hate. Well, there is a heritage of hate there, and that needs to be understood. And true, we are not voting on this. We are not the one making the final decision. However, that history of oppression and dehumanization needs to be put out there, needs to be understood, and needs to be expressed so that people have a full accounting. The first military intervention in capitalism was because of this. The attack on Sumatra was because of this trade. And people are like, oh, well, that's because they killed some sailors. Why did they attack the sailors? Because they would not respect their sovereign boundaries. Because they did not see the Achi people as worthy of their own sovereignty, their own autonomy. So we can go back and forth, but at the end of the day, the violence that was caused here was because of racism. The fact that people are digging in their heels on this and clinging to history is I'm sorry, but the history of this country is steeped in racism. So why should this be any different? And I know I'm on a soapbox and I'm ranting, but I'm tired of this. Like I come up against this every single day. And I'll say it so other people don't have to. But that needs to be part of the consideration when the decision comes for the recommendation. And with that, I'll get off my soapbox. I'll just keep going for the rest of the meeting.
Alphonse, I appreciate that perspective. I think I do have more to say, but of course I do want to formulate some thoughts. I don't disagree with anything you said, but it's more about an understanding of where it comes from. And again, I'm trying to gather thoughts here. So if anyone else, but with everything that comes along with the history of trade in the United States with foreign lands, does that mean depicting trade in any way, even if it built up our society of Salem, is wrong?
I have an answer for that. No, a ship is fine, but let's also look at the other place where Salem made a lot of its money. People that look like me.
Agreed.
We
Yep.
have no pictures like we don't have shackles on our city seal. Like we made a lot of money on the transatlantic slave trade. Let's not kill ourselves here.
Hmm.
So that's not there. And like me personally, I have no skin in the game as far as the depiction of the Achi man. I have no skin in the game. I'm not of the AAPI community. It does not hit me personally. It hits me ideologically because some people are finding it offensive. People from the AARP community are finding it offensive. This started as a community-based movement. This is not Rahina's baby. Like I'm not yelling at you, BJ. I'm sorry. Like
No, no, no.
this comes from the community. Like people of the community are hurt by this. And so, like, if I saw, I would be reacting the same way if there was people being marched off a ship on the city seal. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that had to do with my personal identity uh, that is questionable in Salem's history. Like, Derby is the first millionaire because he made it off of black bodies. But we still celebrate Derby. We leave the little part out about him trading human beings out of it. But I don't think that we should eliminate all depictions of trade. But I mean, again, let's look deeper into the history with the Achi people. Like, and
Yeah.
even that in itself, like so this seal was adopted 7 years after the military intervention. Uh, in the pepper trade. So it wasn't before when everything was still hunky dory. This is after they were a conquered people. I mean, that's something else to take into consideration.
Well, so, and this is where I really would want to lean on Dr. Michael Feener's knowledge, because I feel like a lot gets lost over since 1839.
Mhm.
And I think about how we, in that equal span of time from now, would be looked back upon in the context of everything we're living through currently. Would we be lumped in as having some of the views that we personally ourselves in 2025 would not agree with, simply because the level of knowledge around these events specific to what, how we believe we would be making a stand gets lost throughout the course of time? And so what I'm sort of curious of is, with Dr. Michael Feener, his retelling or understanding of the relationship of trade, because to say that the relationship of trade across all peoples, that anyone from the East trading with the West was under these principles, I feel like is painting a really broad brush without really digging into the nuances of it. I mean, I think of the Massachusetts seal and the iconography of the sword in hand over the head of a Native American, with the iconography of Salem seal, where you have a bird, a dove of peace, with an olive branch in its mouth over the head of these Akanese people. So iconography in totality, I feel like, should be taken account for, but also the understanding of where we stood at the time with trading with these people, because lumping them in with the slave traders, lumping them in with the exploitative traders, I don't think is going to be doing
So
any sense of justice for our
no,
understanding
it's
of the
not.
field today.
But I'm not lumping. I'm speaking specifically of how the president of the United States sent ships, military ships, to that region to quell an uprising because they didn't want to trade with us anymore. Like that's part
Well,
of the history of this.
right. And I mean, what are we seeing today that our president is doing? And do we all individually agree with that? And would we be seen as individually agreeing with it in the 250 years that might pass from now till then?
We're not talking about individual. We're talking about the representation of the city. We're talking
No,
about the totality
exactly.
of the city, not
No,
individually,
no,
because you're not going to get an individual consensus.
no, of course, absolutely. But what I'm saying is the actions of, and this is where, we're taking the actions of, we're saying the president back then that initiated the Battle of Kuala Batu was ultimately speaking for the entirety of, Salem, speaking for the entirety of the depiction of how this city is going to be, presented. And that's where I want to really dig into with this process of having these experts and historians speak to it. To are we tied into that? And if we are, hey, that's what's going to come out. But I don't want to make an assumption around it, which is why I really don't want to, I, I don't want that to be then charging all of the conversations around the imagery here until we hear that information. So that's what I'm worried about. A lot of people painting things with a broad brush, because I do not disagree. There are stereotypes out there that are horrifying, but is this included within that? And that's what I think this task force is here to try to suss out.
I understand that, and if in 200 years things I say are deemed not as evolved as I think they are at the time, perfect. I hope we grow as a society. I hope like things that I'm putting myself out there for that I think are right turn out to be, less evolved. That'd be great. That shows advancement of humanity. But I do think, and I hear your point, VJ. I do hear that, but I also think that the 7 year difference between the military intervention and the adoption of the seal is not so big a window that people become disconnected from it. So I think that's also something to take into consideration.
Agreed. I agree. I would like to know if they were saying something by putting the iconography on there 7 years after
Right.
that we are missing. And that's what I really want to know.
And honestly, I don't think we'll ever know, but we are in a position now to, retcon or post edit. Like even if there was no malintent at the time, like I said, we'll never know. Unless we have like specific journal entries or diary entries from the people that decided upon the iconography, like, oh, let's stick it to the Achi by putting them on there and putting a dove over the head after we bomb them into submission. We're not going to know. However, it's causing pain now, and that's a consideration. Like it wasn't perfect then, it's not perfect now, and you know these are considerations that I think we need to discuss and weigh, and not just go, oh, they didn't know better. Like they didn't know better has never been a good excuse for me. If the power if I have the power or the ability to give redress, like we can do posthumous amends. That's fine.
Can I add something here? Because I'm clearly the oldest person on the task force. I'll be 71 in 2 weeks. And I've lived in Salem a very, very long time. And one of the reasons I believe this is coming up is because we've become such a diverse and inclusive city. When I moved here, it was 80% blue collar Catholic residents. And I part of loving life in Salem is loving how it is now. With this, we have a lot of LGBTQ plus people, we have people of color, we have AAPI, we have, the community is much more diverse. It's also women are much more have a different position in Salem, and it's delightful. It's part of what makes it why a lot of people move here and come here. And I think some of the resistance has to come because I know some of the folks in these associations and neighbors is resistance to that, the change that Salem's changing. And but you can't stop the river. I mean, that's the deal. And I think also the history can be acknowledged and respected without totally like slamming us into 2025 as a trend. What's trending right now. I think having a good look at the history, understanding it better, getting that information out there, because a lot of people honestly don't know that, Alphonse. I didn't know that until you told that story today. I'm really glad that you shared it. I hope you're not leaving the task force because
Oh no, no, I'm not leaving task force because I'm fed up and tired. No, I would see this through the end. I have there's a family emergency that is calling me out of Salem, so I
oh,
have to.
okay.
Sorry to hear that.
But I think those are the kinds of things that people, because they're people with good hearts, that if they had that information, I may be naive, but I believe it would change people's attitudes, and that's how I sort of see my contribution to this.
Hmm. I I I do want to have the discussion around, well, and again, this is not something we're going to be able to resolve today, but this is going to be more presentations and getting an understanding around this specific event. Because Alphonse, you're right, it's charged within 7 years of the Kuala Batu battle. Absolutely. Let's dig into that. What happened before, during, and after? What was the relationship with these people before, during, and after? Was this, let's just get the circumstances behind it, because there are a lot of, judging a book by its cover. And this is where it's a perfect opportunity to bring those facts to light in a place like Salem that has a ton of its history recorded. I mean, the fact that I was able to get from the city council, like the fact that they, the level of detail they went into to consider all of this, as from my last presentation, what is incredible. Like, to be able to have that as a resource is pretty much as close as you can get to reading their diaries. And maybe those diaries are there. And so, this is what this is really where it's about, figuring out the nuances of the past, and not just, well, taking it at face value and assuming that, that it was done in bad intent.
But I also want to jump in and say that I think that, it's a multifaceted problem. And while we want to know more about the history, that's so important to each and every one of us here. It's so important to just knowing more about our city. It was like what we were talking about in our last meeting. It's like, does the plow in the Bible serve as a good city representation of our city today? It's also about like, well, if there is something that some people, that a community people find problematic, or if there is something in this imagery that relates back to, these kinds of caricatures, is there a way, like, it's just more about like, yes, the history, but also like this moment in time, and representing our city, and also making sure that we can do it in a way that, where we're really thinking thoughtfully about including the history, and reaching out to people as we are. So I just want to say it's not just about good or bad intentions, right? Whether the intentions were good or not, I don't think has a bearing on, like, let's go back to the plow in the Bible, right? It just doesn't make any sense for us anymore if that was the case. So it's just, there's a lot to unpack. So full disclosure, I am in Zurich. It is 11:26. I'm just gonna ask, would you guys mind if we continue the meeting, just because I know I have to give my presentation and it's getting a little bit late.
Yeah, we can move
Yeah.
this along. I just didn't want to interrupt the discussion because I feel like this is all part of the dialogue that we're here to have. Um, but yes, I think, yeah, let's just continue this to the next meeting. I think we will obviously have a lot of public input to review in the coming months, and we'll have the listening session as well as the tabling events. Um, and ultimately, yes, like, it is a decision that the city council is going to make, right? So I think that's important to remember, and that's important for the public to note as well, right? Like, it's not we are not making the final decision, and we've said this pretty much in every meeting. So I think that's important to emphasize. So okay, we'll continue this. Um, all right. So moving on. So the next agenda item is an item that Poochie asked me to include around having a discussion of inviting outside experts to present on topics relevant to the city seal. So yes, I'm very open to that option, and I'd love to open up the floor for discussion on that topic.
On the heels of what we were just discussing, I have enthusiastically would like to hear more from outside experts.
Yes, but I guess
Yeah.
which ones? We need to be specific. Like I have the intent of writing the Peabody Essex Museum as a sort of starting point. I can do that this month. Perhaps they can refer us to a few experts. But if anybody else has anybody that they want us to reach out to, or any specific historians,
You know what
please let me know.
I really enjoyed was in VJ's presentation about hearing sort of the backstory of what the citizens of Natick were thinking. Um, because I would love some of these seals that have been voted through for changes. There was one where I read the whole town voted on it. That's how it got through, is the people who lived in the town voted for the change themselves as a body. Of hearing their, maybe just something about their process or how they approached it. Because I like seeing the visuals from VJ's uh or maybe it was Regina, I can't remember who, but anyway, we saw the different visuals from the Natick.
That was, yeah, that was my presentation.
Uh, but to hear from somebody who was on that committee.
Yeah, I can invite, yes, I can make that happen. I can invite someone from the Natick team. It would probably be their communications person, because I think that's the person that managed the process. But I can find out more information.
I think it
Did
would be helpful to also perhaps have someone present on Asian American and you know, sort of alternate histories almost, and the like in addition to sort of the dominant narratives of history around trade and commerce and um I mean kind of leaning on what Alphonse had said just now about, you know, it's almost like a footnote in history sometimes, the experiences of communities of color who are influenced by, you know, colonization or trade and what really goes on. And I know that it's a very complicated history too. It's not as neat and clean either. But wouldn't it be nice to get a sense of that as well, specific to Salem and specific to um, sort of the context that we're talking about. You know, we've touched upon illustrations, we've touched upon sort of, you know, both in Suzanne and Vijay's presentation around like where the seal came from, what's the images, what is the meaning, and things like that. And what about the people of the time? What was going on with Asian Americans at the time? What were their lives like at the time? Were there conversations like how much political involvement or how much like how what groups of people influenced the, you know, the larger decision makings of the world we lived in. It would be nice to know a little bit more. I'm happy to reach out to some folks through my professional listservs to see, and I'm sure Rachel can also do that. But you know, it would be nice to sort of garner some more information around that. Would be lovely.
Yeah, I think having a second historian I think having more historians can never be a bad thing, right? But also, I was going to mention possibly we could invite the people from kind of who were involved in the process behind the state flag. I think that they had a really long process. I think it took, I mean, 3 or 4 years between when they started and just hearing about kind of the conversation there. I mean, they're not even finished, right? They don't even have a redesign yet. They're just have an open call at the moment. So I think it would be great to just to hear more. And again, that's like as our state
So
kind
Rachel,
of
I'm really
symbol.
curious about that. Like, do they have a set of criteria that they would like to give the designer to incorporate? Like, it sounds like you know about some of the,
I mean, I just saw some people that I know, being an artist, I saw some people posting about their redesigns because they just posted the open call. So I haven't actually looked at the open call. I think we can all take a look. But they do have some, I think, basic parameters.
Yeah,
But
will you
and
send me that link?
just to correct
I'll
something
try
that
to find it.
was Yeah, and sorry, just to correct something that was stated earlier. So I don't think they've made the decision to change the state seal. So I just wanted to make that clear. They're in the process of that. They have a commission established, essentially to make that decision. So they are essentially going through the same process as we are at the state level. Um, so again, it's around this whole concept of revisiting imagery, right? And like the imagery that evolves sort of over time, right? In terms of how that image is received and interpreted through history.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna drop it into the chat. Or do we not
There's
have a
no chat.
chat?
No,
Hmm.
there's no chat.
Well, it's I can email it later, but yeah, they're just asking for public submissions to kind of think about what our new symbols could be. They say rooted in shared values and history, which sounds a lot like what we're trying to think about.
Well,
But yeah,
So
that
any
and
like
I
opinions?
also
half of the problem is establish what the symbolism is, and then have it artistically or a graphic designer or an artist design using the symbolism that they want to incorporate.
Yeah. Also, I just got an email from Miyabi Shields, and she's suggesting Professor Erica Lee from Harvard, the author of Making Asian America and America. So that's a great suggestion. So I'll follow up with them on that.
Rena, is this a rolling list that we could sort of, add to as we come across?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Like this is not, there's no deadline associated with this.
Cool.
I mean, other than the one that we were given by the city council. So, yeah, I think, so far I'm hearing Peabody Essex Museum, somebody from Natick. Aditi, you said something around,
Alternative histories and um I don't have a specific name right now, but I could reach out to
yeah,
multiple
I
persons.
guess just get back to me with more specific details about
Sounds
who you
good.
want. Um, and somebody from this somebody to come talk to us about the state flag and that process, and then this person right here that is being suggested is Erica Lee from Harvard.
Hey, Rahina, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know if you have any contacts in Watertown, but I just came across an article recently that they also went through this, but they landed on, I think, something that came up in one of the presentations too, of the adoption of a city logo. So I think they went through a similar process. They did an input survey, so on and so forth. So that could be something in addition to Natick, if anybody has kind of contacts there.
What was the name of the town?
Watertown?
Watertown. Yeah,
There's
I
a
can reach out.
bunch, and I think it's kind of important to emphasize that because it would it was it would let people know. They seem to think that we're the only ones doing this, and it's an um, assault on the iconography of Salem. But to see that I have a list of 6 or 7 water tots new to me uh, that that actually are in the process of changing the seal or have actually changed it. Natick's not the only one.
No, and yeah, Natick is definitely not the only one. I think this is something that is happening across the country in many different ways. And so, yeah, I think that's we are just undergoing our own process here in Salem, right? Around this.
I will
Okay.
say we have, yeah, we have it much harder than some. Um, there's I don't know, some town in North Dakota or maybe South Dakota where it's literally a colonist like clubbing a Native American. That's like their steal. It's unreal. Uh, yeah,
And what are
yeah.
they doing? Are they for it or against it?
Oh, no, they changed it. I'm pretty sure they changed it unless I saw
They didn't change
unless it's in
it.
talks right now, but it was brought up.
They didn't
They didn't
change
change
it?
it. They
No, no,
didn't
no, no,
change it
no. I can't say.
despite public opinion and outrage. They didn't change it. There was a whole Comedy Central routine on it actually.
Oh,
Um,
really?
Why am I
yeah,
not
I
surprised?
will share it.
So wait, Aditi, so they kept that? That's their city seal?
Yeah,
Oh my God.
I know.
Okay. Well, if
Anyway,
anybody has any more suggestions, or if anybody from the public watching this recording or just listening in right now, feel free to write anybody on the task force with their recommendations for anybody that we think that they think we should be hearing from. Okay. So
I just
moving
wanted to
on.
ask as well. I think we skipped the voting on the infographic.
Oh, thank you
And
for
I just
pointing
want
that
to
out.
like make sure that we kind of get it over with so that we don't have to wait another month.
That was my fault. I'm so sorry. That was an accident. I just accidentally skipped over that.
And
So
partially
yeah,
mine
we
for
can
derailing the meeting a bit, so I apologize for that.
yeah, so
I
thank you.
really appreciate your share, Alphonse. Like I didn't say that, but I want to say thank you for sharing.
Welcome. It needed to be out there. Like I said, I'm not going to be here for the rest of these, so I wanted to put that there. Sorry, Regina, I'm like derailing more, so I'll shut up now.
Thank you.
It's quite all right. And yeah. Okay, so moving on to um sorry, so just a follow-up item that we need to vote on is approving the infographic. So Rachel, would you mind sharing your screen so that we can see the final version?
Yep. So here it is. I simplified it a little bit. I took out some text, so it's just easier to read. The wording hasn't changed really at all. Maybe I took out like 1 or 2 words just for spacing and simplicity. And then I haven't added the QR code, but I can easily whenever we're ready to do that.
Perfect. Yeah, so that would be my one feedback is we need the QR codes for
Yeah, just right down here.
Yeah,
I feel
for
like
the
it'd be like website, QR code.
yeah, website and infographic or not, sorry, not infographic, input form. Perfect.
Yep, and then I can make the Spanish version whenever you want to work on the translation, and then it should be all ready to go.
Is this on Canva or how did you make this?
It's on InDesign.
Okay, yeah, so then I'll just get you the text somehow over email.
Yeah, it's super easy for me to
Great.
to put in.
All right, so may I entertain a motion to approve the infographic?
I first the motion. Is that what you said?
Yeah, or you can say so moved.
So moved.
Great.
It's like moved.
Yeah, can I get a second?
So second.
Excellent. So all those in favor, raise hand. Great. So everybody approves the infographic. Excellent. So we can move on now. So the next item is, I think Aditi, something you asked me to include around attendance during task force meetings. So just wanted to open up the floor for discussion on that.
I just had a question. Like, I've noticed, like, I have, you know, I'm a full-time licensed psychologist. I work 21 to 25 hours a week. I know everybody in here works a lot of hours, and like, and in on top of that, I have made it a priority to attend these meetings as someone who was appointed into the task force. And I don't want to cast aspersions on folks, but it can be very demotivating sometimes to have attend and then also see that some folks have just not made it a priority to attend these meetings. I want to honor, like, if there are personal reasons, health, family, I get that. But my dad was in the hospital when I was up at 12 a.m. and attended the first task force meeting from all the way from India. I know folks travel internationally. I just wish that we, you know, is that I'm just speaking again in drafts and from my own experience. This is a priority for me, and I make it a point to show up. And I want to give people grace, but then I've also noticed that some folks have just not even attended a single meeting, or and then also it's very frustrating to know that we have very capable so-called associate members sitting there wanting to actively participate in the task force who don't have the opportunity to do so. So it just, you know, like, and like, do we as a task, like, part of me is like, should we as a task force write the mayor a letter, be like, hey, please, like, then give space to the folks like who can want to dedicate time, want to attend these spaces, like, and you know, folks on this team have had health issues, probably have things going on in your personal lives that also, and you're still making the time to be here today. You know, I just want to honor that and respect that, and like have an open dialogue about like what can we do for, you know, it just it needs to feel equitable for all. That's where I'm coming from. Again, I don't want to like boohoo anyone. I'm just saying I'm making it a priority to show up. It makes me very disheartened sometimes when some folks just I haven't seen, like, I haven't seen the faces of some people at all, you know.
Alphonse, go ahead.
Thank you, Hina. Yeah, um, I second that, Aditi. In some of the other bodies I serve on, it's been written into the bylaws that if you miss a certain number of consecutive meetings, you will you not that you'll be kicked out, but you might be spoken to, assuming that it's not like an emergency where they've been in the hospital for 5 months or whatever, you know, but something like that. But I agree, like everyone here is taking the time from Zurich, from India, you know, to make this a priority. And I understand also, you know, life comes up, life comes at you fast. Believe me, I get it. But a message that, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it because of this, or just some sort of effort for communicate, at least communication that you won't be attending instead of just a no call, no show. And I'm wondering if, as a task force, we have the leeway to make that, to as a collective body, to make that rule. I don't know. Maybe it is the mayor's decision. Maybe it's with the chair and the vice chair. I don't know as far as the task force goes. But if that is the discussion and we can do it, I think we should.
Yeah, and so a few responses to that. I think it is up to the mayor, right? Like, I think the mayor appoints the task force, and as a task force, we don't necessarily operate the same as a commission or yeah, a commission or public board, right? but I think I'll certainly let him know, and I'll certainly let him know this feedback, and we can go from there. Dr. Fiener has been away traveling, so we know he's been very communicative about that, so I think I just wanted to name that. Also, Carly Dwyer, I did reach out to her, and she's teaching abroad until August, I think. So she was very open about that. And so she'll be back attending these meetings regularly at that point. So, and I don't know about the clerk. I did I'm getting some information that they will apparently be out for the foreseeable future, so I don't know what's happening there. She was scheduled to present at the next meeting. I don't think that's going to happen. So that is something that is a question mark, and I can ask the mayor's office about, because, somebody else from the clerk's office could be appointed to attend the meetings in the meantime. I don't have much information beyond that. Am I missing anyone? Oh, also, now that Alphonse will be leaving, the Race Equity Commission has to appoint someone else. I don't know how long that process will take. Presumably, that will be a quick turnaround. We'll see. Yeah, but I expect that the Race Equity Commission will just have to choose someone else and appoint them. In the meantime, I'm noticing that we barely made quorum this meeting,
I
right?
was
And
gonna say
so,
that.
so all with Alphonse being gone, we have one less person to make quorum. So this could be a very real issue for us to even hold meetings moving forward.
Your quorum number might change if I'm gone because I'm no longer officially on the body for the total. So depending on where that falls, as far as the halfway point, your quorum might be 5 instead of 6.
Would it be an
But
empty
That's a good
spot, or
point.
would it just be a less person? How would that work?
So
I don't know.
if I'm not, if so it goes by total roster, and if I'm not on the total roster, I don't count towards quorum.
Yeah. So I guess that's true. That the logic is sound. So I guess we can assume that our quorum would be 5 people until somebody is appointed by the Race Equity Commission.
I mean, is there a way to? I, I, I don't know all the procedures and inner workings of city offices, so I'm gonna prereq what I'm asking by that. However, like it would really be nice to have some of the associate, like, couldn't they be like the alternate members be bumped up to full-time members, especially if you're having shortage of people even attending our task force meetings. If some folks can't make it, it would, I mean, because now it's not like per mayor's logic, it was because there were too many people who applied and he wanted to honor them space. I wonder if now there are not too many people there, could we go back to like asking the council to appoint more people into it while we continue these meetings? Like they have access to the videos, they have access to all our notes and minutes and everything, you know?
Wasn't
Like,
the original number 11 supposed to be 11?
Yes, but
yeah.
again, one person was a youth member. I have not heard from them.
So maybe we could fill that position. I agree with Aditi. I think it's a waste of a lot of cred that we have sitting there. It's like when you do jury duty and they have extra jurors listen to the whole case. They've been here the whole time, just like in jury duty, you hear the
Yeah,
whole
and some of
case.
them, some of our alternative, sorry, I cut you off, Susan.
No, that's
I'm
no,
really passionate.
feel free to cut me off. I feel as you do, though. They should be used better.
No, I just think some of them have been attending all the meetings more so than the actual task force
Right.
members, some of them. It's
This
kind
this
of
is true.
unfair.
Yes, I can attest to that
You
from
know?
the attendees list. Yes, I mean, I think also another option that is worth exploring is whether the Race Equity Commission can appoint someone other than somebody sitting in the commission. I don't know the answer to that, but that's an idea that I'm getting as we're talking about this. Yeah, I'll relay this feedback to the mayor. I think ultimately the task force appointments are his decision. So I think it's, I'll let you know what I hear back. Any further comments on this topic?
Just that I agree, and I just, it does feel like a shame, especially if we only have 5 people. It's like, I appreciate everyone who's here, if there's 5 of us or there's 6 of us, but it's like the more that we have, just like the more historians and more experts, it's like the more people we have working on this problem and thinking about it, the better, and if we have people who are ready and willing, then.
Yeah, so I just got an email. Sorry, I'm getting lots of very active participants today. Let me tell you, just got an email from Jeff Cohen. Quorum is set by number of members. So if some unable to attend, it doesn't affect the quorum. Still 6. So it would still be 6, according to Jeff Cohen. Yeah, so that would be a very
Well,
real issue, is
again,
making quorum.
you know, you'll be down a member. Not that I'm not attending, you'll be down a member. So,
Okay. All right.
yeah.
Well, I'll get back to you all on that because I don't know the answer. Okay. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Just being conscientious of the time. Okay. Or conscious. I guess maybe both are correct. Okay. Next item was supposed to be a presentation from task force member Michael Feener, but he is not able to present today, so we'll automatically continue that to the next meeting. So next up is a presentation by Vice Chair Rachel Tonthat. So without further ado, Rachel, take it away.
All right, give me 1 minute to share my screen. Okay. So, yeah. So art and representation. I'm just gonna run through some examples and talk a little bit about different kind of theories and philosophies that underpin like ways of looking at art, basically, and images. And I think the first thing I wanted to say and kind of throw out there is like, why should we look at art when we're thinking about the city seal? And I think it goes back to exactly what we were talking about earlier in this meeting. We are all seeing life and the world through a different lens. There's also the lenses of time, and that art is a way of seeing. And art writing, which is what I also do, is borrowing from a lot of different history, psychology, a lot of philosophy in order to kind of bring that together. I'm going to show you some concrete examples. So I wanted to start with a really big topic in art, because I think it really has a lot to do with what we're talking about with the imagery on the seal. So Edward Said came out with this book in 1978, Orientalism, where he is like kind of the first person who is talking about Orientalism as this way that the West was looking at Asia as a place of riches, as a place of fantasy and exoticism. And, you know, actually Orientalism, even before he came out with this like, critical theory, was an art movement in France, basically at the start of the 1800s, because Napoleon invaded Egypt in about like, I think it was like 1798. And once France gained access to Egypt, Algeria, and all of that, then they started to travel around, but they created this imagery. So for example, this is a painting by Delacroix, Women of the Algiers, and he did go to Algeria and he did see some places, but this image that he created where the women are unveiled, the women are, kind of loosely dressed, is absolutely not historically accurate, right? He projected this fantasy of what, you know, let's say a lot of men wanted to see, but also what French society dreamed of Asia. I should have, sorry, this is not like real nudity, so I'm just gonna let it go, but maybe I should have had a little warning on my, but anyway, so again, we're also talking about like, we talked a lot about inequality today, and I think that another thing that we should mention with this Ang's painting is that the only reason that he was allowed to show this nudity at the time was because it was a woman from the Orient. If it had been a Western woman, if it had been a French woman, this would have been absolutely inappropriate, and he would have not been able to show it in like a grand salon. And because he put this this type of dress on her and all of this fantasy, it was accepted. And that's why this movement became so popular. And you know, even though we're like, okay, this was the 1800s, this was a while ago, I also want to point out this show, which is on at the Metropolitan Museum of Art right now, called Monstrous Beauty, which is talking about the exact same things. It's talking about the history of this like Western idealized view of here, I will show you another image. So these ideas that came through the trade, but how they negatively impacted women, not just Asian women, but Western women as well, as they were living in these very restrictive societies and had these like tea ceremonies. And I think that what we should take away from Orientalism is that even though it was something that is in the past, it still affects people today. This is a piece here on the right by Patty Chang, and it is a video work. I think it's from the 90s, and she's a living artist. And it's about, you know, that femininity and that the self-consciousness of knowing that you're being watched and perceived in a specific way as an Asian woman. So another text I want to mention is this essay from Spivak, Can the Subaltern Speak? Because she's talking a lot about, she's more deeply going into what Said talks about, and that is structural inequality, right? So if we look at this image, this vase or this decorative object on the right, there were a lot of portrayals of Asian people that were made by European ceramic producers, and they were, again, this kind of exoticized person. I should have added more images, and actually when I re-upload this, I'll add way more. But it's important to note that just like Alphonse was talking about, you know, this small town in Sumatra, they didn't have an army, right? So they didn't have even like a large ship. If there was an issue, they weren't treated as equals. And that's another thing to think about in representation. It's like we have these images of each other, and even if it's not meant to be harmful, it's okay to kind of like have these images, but when one party is more dominant, that's when it becomes problematic. So to go back to Algiers and to Egypt, they were colonized by France for, you know, many years. For, you know, I actually don't know exactly how many, but it, you know, like Vietnam, it's quite a long time. All right, so I'm just going to go through a couple of representations more from this time period. So when we're talking about representations of people and we're talking about inequality, I think a really good example to think about is this painting by Dana Schultz. And she painted a representation of Emmett Till. And this is a quote from her. She was thinking about this painting for a long time, and she really wanted to portray something meaningful and poignant. But at the time when this appeared in the Whitney Biennial, people were really upset about it because, as many of you know, Emmett Till died because a white woman made an accusation about him, and he was brutally murdered. And then some people were like, okay, well, how can a white woman feel comfortable portraying this scene where his mother um, told the funeral director to leave an open casket so people could see what had been done to him? So in this case, people were upset that that this scene was being represented from someone outside of the community. They felt that she didn't have a right to do it. And it was a really mixed response, which I wanna like kind of go deeper into that mixed response because there were like a famous Black artist, I don't know if you know Kara Walker. She actually defended Dana and was like, I think as an artist she was very poetic about it, but more or less she was like, as an artist, you're just trying to go into different moments. And I think it's important that this is a painting that she did that's her personal opinion, right? So even though some people may have felt that she didn't have a right to do it, it was a painting that wasn't for sale. So she was not going to profit from it. And it was shown, and then she, kept it. But if we think about an official representation, and I think that's when it gets a little bit more complicated. So I don't know if any of you have seen this or had gone to the Museum of Natural History anytime before 2022, I believe. This statue is just called Equestrian Statue of Theodore Roosevelt, is by James Earl Fraser, and it was recently removed because for a really long time, people were like, we don't like this. Um, Ellen V. Futter said that eventually it was removed because of the statue's hierarchical composition. Even though actually James Earl Fraser was a huge supporter of Native Americans at the time, it just didn't strike the right tone in the 2020s. And because it was in front of the museum, it felt like an official stance of the museum. And I think that's an important thing to note. It wasn't just something that Fraser had in his house that he showed one time in an exhibition. It was something that had then become part of a public presentation, that the museum was showing this at its face. And another one I want to show kind of as we get towards the end is this statue, which again, he really supported them. I mean, when you read about, how he was thinking about the work and he was trying to critique the government, but ultimately, as he was making the statue in 1894, today, people, even though this is the statue, actually, I believe a copy of it is in the the Museum of like Western Culture. It shows kind of a problematic message, which he did not intend, which is it perpetuates the myth of the vanishing Indian, right? So noble, brave, and destined to sacrifice both freedom and land for the making of America. And I think it's just important to note that like these contexts change, and even intention can, I mean, in the case of Dana Schultz and Fraser, I think intention is very important, but like any image, as we were discussing with the drive, anything can be construed differently, and that interpretation can change with time outside of the artist's will. And the final point I wanted to make was this work by Corky Lee, where he got together, it was a big group project, because I just wanted to mention, as we're on the topic of representation, Asian Americans in art. So, as many of you probably know, the railroad was completed by Chinese people who had moved to America to find work. They were the first Chinese Americans. And when they took the picture at the end of the completion of the railroad, actually they were just like hustled away. And then all of the white foremen came into the picture and they have this huge congratulatory photo. So they wanted to remake this image with Asian Americans to show like the descendants of people who'd really made this railroad. And another thing, yeah, so that was the one thing that I wanted to mention in the conclusion is that similar to this idea of Orientalism still reflecting on Asian people today and on Asian Americans, I think it's I think we have to be aware of the distinction between Asian people and Asian Americans and to think about how cultural images kind of influence them, even unintentionally. So, yes, that's my presentation. Please ask any questions. I wish I could have included like
So
3 or 4 times as much images.
in the study of, no, I'm just kidding, I'm just kidding. Great presentation, great presentation. And I think your last point is probably the most valid point of this entire discussion, is that when you say Asian people, that is not synonymous with Asian American because it's a very different experience here. And I say that speaking, I'm Black, I'm not African. My experience would be very different if I was not raised here. This is without the history of this country. So I think that's another consideration that maybe a lot of people just aren't getting, and there's a nuance there, but it's a very important nuance.
Yeah,
And
I wanted to mention it because I think I saw it in a few responses, and something I've heard. And while I understand, I mean, Michael Feener has so much, contact with people in Asia, but I lived in Asia for 5 years. I lived in Vietnam and I lived in Taiwan. I worked there. And it's just that what I want to say about it is like, but if we're talking again about representation and power structures and like identity, is that people who, like, for example, I'm half Vietnamese, but Vietnamese people that live in a monoculture have never understood what it's like to be othered because of the way they look, because they live in a place where everyone looks, they're all like the same race. And so I think that to be like, let's ask someone from Asia what they think about racism is like, well, it's just a different group of people, and they have different lived experiences. And that's really important and we should talk to them, but it's just not the same. We shouldn't conflate them.
Aditi, go ahead.
I actually really appreciate you saying that because even my own racial identity development, having grown up in India, I didn't really recognize, or I really had to contend with this idea that I am a racial being and after I moved to the United States. And I remember this was in early 2010 or so. This was the first time like Halloween conversations around Halloween costumes came out, where I actually saw someone dressed in like an Indian clothing, like cosplaying Jasmine from Aladdin, and and it was very offensive to me. But I also did not have the language to talk about it. Why? And I remember there were people from India that I showed that picture to, of the person dressed up in sari, who didn't understand, like, did not understand Halloween, did not understand how that was a caricature. And everybody was like, oh, this is great. Look, they're appreciating our culture. And I was like, well, if they were appreciating it, then nobody would have laughed at me, wearing a kurta to class one time. Like, there were these like mixed experiences I had around, which just made me realize that like what I was experiencing here in the US was very different than how those images were perceived back home by people like who were also from my culture. There is something unique about living in America and having to contend with race and racialized experiences. And there's also this like weird like downplaying of it that happened. At least I don't, that also happened simultaneously, that I struggled with on my own too. Like, this must not be really happening, because um you know um like America's a melting pot, or whatever narratives that we're fed. And I always used to joke, I grew up on a hefty diet of Friends, and I used to think that the US looked like New York City before I came here. And so it was a lot of growth and education for me too, being part of the Asian diaspora. So I think that we have to, like, it's complicated. You can't just, I don't, I guess I don't want the only voice to be a group of folks from Aceh, or someone who's speaking for the folks of Aceh to be like the Aceh people say it's okay. So what I feel and say and experience while living in Salem is not like valid or valued. I want both those to be valued and both to be contextualized.
One
Yeah,
of
and
the
I
things,
think
oh no, go ahead, Richard.
yeah, I think one of the things that is coming up for me as we learn more is, this concept around identity and identity exploration. And I think people across, across the country are having their own personal conversations around what their own identity is, right? And so I think it's very important to remember that racial groups are not monoliths, right? So just because you go to one person, one Asian American person, and they say, "Oh, I'm not offended by the seal," that doesn't mean that they're speaking for the entire group. And like, you shouldn't use that one opinion as like, "Oh, see that this person doesn't find it offensive, so why do you?" And just like, we also shouldn't take the opinion of one or two, or of one small group, and say like, oh, they find it offensive, right? So I think it goes both ways around like, racial groups are not monoliths. And I think that's why we're taking that into account, as well as we learn about the history, and we're trying to learn as much about it. But I mean, I see it with the Latino community all the time, where like, each person has a completely different perspective when it comes to their own perception of their own identity. Uh, Lots of Latinos don't even identify as Latino, right? For whatever reason, because of this, right? And so in the census, a lot of Latinos will identify as white, and that also affects like how demographics are reported, right? Um, like, I can tell you that, the census shows consistently that, you know, roughly 12 to 15% of people in Salem speak Spanish. But when I tell that to people, they're always surprised, because they're like, "Oh, I think it's much, much higher," right? And if you go to the data collected in the school district, yes, like that's very much supported because the number in the school district is much higher than the census data, right? So I think this is all a part of this conversation, and I think like it's very dangerous to say like, because I think one of the things that I've personally been hearing from people is like, well, I talked to this one Asian American person and they don't find it offensive, so it's not offensive. And I think that's a very like dangerous statement to make.
Like
Well, the point I
go
wanted
no.
to make is there's what, 11 countries in the API group? 11. And I think people don't realize that every one of those countries has a different identity and a different culture, and the Sumatran is just one aspect of that. But the default position, and I found this, and I wanted to say, make this note to Rachel, when I was looking at my images, the default position is always Chinese, and with the images. And the other thing I wanted to say, Rachel, I'm sure that I don't know if anybody else in the, because Rachel and I are both the artists, is the Picasso women of Algiers. I don't know if you wanted to
There's so
include
many.
because when I was looking for images for this, for my presentation, it's really hard to find images of Asian men. It's always Asian women. And they always are following the same stereotype of being sexy and exotic, or else they're bad girls. Or they're sweet, innocent, geisha-like girls. And it was really hard to find the images of the men because there are just fewer of them. And I think that one of the things with our seal that maybe is also important to focus on is that it's a man. It's an image of a man. And maybe people perceive the images of Asian men as less of a stereotype than they're unable to see it as easily as they would with the geisha or the sexy Matahari spy kind of tight dressed type woman. And I think that was the true with the paintings that you showed, Rachel. And also if you even with Cubist Picasso, it's the same. It's still that same male view of sexy women. So I'm going off on another tangent here. I'll stop. But I think that that's important to consider in there that there's 11, we're talking about 11 different cultures, not one Chinese person. And when I look at that seal, I see the stereotype of that Chinese man with the pigtail. I often wonder what they really look like because they always are rendered exactly the same. Anyway, that's my little Alphonse rant.
I was thinking that was a great presentation, Rachel. It was really fantastic. I'm probably going to have more to say at the next meeting as I process our thoughts in between now and then. But we're talking about sort of the AAPI, we're talking about sort of Asians as a whole in this instance. But what I'm wondering is, through the history of the seal, it wasn't meant to represent all Asians. It was meant to represent a specific group in a specific place in a specific time. So I understand the points, absolutely everything that was just said about looking upon it as representing monoliths. However, from the get-go, it was always supposed to be representing specific group, people, a place, and time, which then begs the question, is it possible then to correct the record if it is incorrect by going back to representatives of that community, historians within that community, as it was called out specifically way back when it was created? Is it possible to go back and correct that now with the tools that they necessarily didn't have back at the time?
I guess I would just go back to the question that I asked last meeting, which is it appropriate to have a person on a seal? Because I think that, and that's why I wanted to make the distinction in my presentation between a private representation, a personal representation that is one person's opinion or one person's impression, like a painting, right? Um, and then having a government sanctioned or an institutionally representative image of a person. And I think that just from my perspective, at the moment, which, of course I'm here to learn and listen, but it feels that what I've always felt, especially as an artist, is that again, we are all seeing something very different, and everything that we try to do is an imperfect, amalgamation of what we feel and see. And so I don't think that we can ever have a perfect representation that will satisfy everyone. And again, it just feels like that becomes a huge problem when we want to have a person, unless as we discussed, it's kind of like an abstract person, like a god or a goddess or I don't know, an animal deity, whatever. But yeah, I think that it's like, why do we want to have a person, I guess, is another thing. If there's so many problems with representation and with misunderstanding. And another thing that I wanted to say is that even if, even if, that Sumatran figure was made with good intentions, I think that we do have to acknowledge that it doesn't exist in a vacuum, that it exists in, the imagery that Suzanne showed us, the imagery, all these paintings. It exists in this milieu of just misunderstanding and a bit of racism and a bit of fetishism, which goes both ways, by the way. I wish I could find it, but I saw some absolutely insane sculptures of like that Chinese people made of white people that came to trade that were extremely like, also you're like, no one wants to see that. Like that's racist, right? So that would be my like just short and kind of evolving answer at the moment.
Yeah. So Rachel, you bring up it's a really good point, which I can pivot into something else I've been thinking about earlier. You're kind of getting into the mascot discussion here, where if it was a specific, had it been like the Achi ambassador, a very specific person, yes, cool, fine, whatever, great, we're honoring an individual. But since it's not an individual, it's a general depiction. We are getting into the mascot thing, and let's look at what's going on with mascots in professional sports and how there's been this kind of sea change from moving away from representing peoples, not a person, but peoples, where when they were first instituted, I'm sure they thought it was honoring them in a way. The I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble for this, but my one of my old favorite teams was the Washington team. Exactly, exactly.
Right, right.
But so problematic through a modern lens, and I think goes back to, we evolve, and people as mascots. I know it still happens, but I don't think it should. And when you get into depictions of people that are defined by region characteristics, immutable characteristics, race, things like that, maybe we should err on the side of caution. But I think that's another interesting fold in for this conversation is, people as mascots.
Well, I mean, throughout this whole conversation and just the whole task force, there's always in my mind this cognitive dissonance of the mascot of who's the mascot of Salem. I mean, honestly, what is the more prominent image that's out there? And this conversation in concert with all that being there is kind of like we're just going to ignore that for a little bit. And I just feel like it's just something that has always been on my mind about the reality of what is the representation of this city? Is it the logo that's everywhere, or is it the seal that's, in the few places? So, and then just talking about sensitivity over imagery of having people on it. That's another one, right? I mean, everything we're talking about can also apply to this other thing, the witch logo as we're mentioned it. But it's very interesting, you know, what is the reality of people's perception of this place. And this nuanced conversation, I feel like, really should be happening on the other side too, if we're going to be taking it holistically. But I don't think that's really what we're necessarily been charged to do. But it's has to be, there's a cognitive dissonance going on. It's just really wild to me.
I agree with you, Vijay, and I think that like when we were having like when initially there were more public conversations even before the task force was formed, there were folks who said that they are um, descendants of folks who were accused of witchcraft, who spoke up against how problematic sometimes it felt. And in fact, if you go to the, I know it's a considered to be like a hokey museum, but the Salem Witch Museum, if you go through some of the panels that are after the little 20-minute little light up sketch that they do, it goes into a huge history of witchcraft and like voices of folks who are related and descendants of some of the folks who died were killed, and you know we have a whole tourism industry around it, but there are those like there are conversations out there actually, and it's actually very interesting. And you know, I would love to like I'm not a descendant of witches, and I don't really identify with that faith, like Wiccans, but I have a curiosity about it, and I wonder how folks feel when they come. Because some folks are drawn to this city because of it, and other folks come here for tourism. There's so much, like, there's really interesting stuff around that too. You're right. You know, but yeah.
In a sense, could not, to some way and extent, the same be applied to some people perceiving it as, you know, looking at it through a lens of positive, but also then some others looking like the descendants through a lens of negative? Isn't that same dynamic also then applying to this seal? You know, we have the history surrounding it that if people understood it, might appreciate it, but the people, you know, just like those that could go through the Witch Museum and see that final room, might appreciate it a bit more versus seeing it just as its image alone and getting offended by it without having that added context to then make it more understandable. I feel like it's the similar situation between the two.
Well, and Vijay, though, I think it's worth pointing out is that the Wiccan community and a lot of younger women, especially, are taking back um, the witch title. And if you just walk by House Witch someday and look at their windows, there are images of the peak cat and the woman on the broom that are totally different than the green-faced haggy crone type that's on our seal. And I think whenever any population or group takes an image back, they reappropriate it and own it. Um, that's different. And I, but I would say that especially as an older person, I don't like those images of the green face, long nose with a wart on it, old women, you know, with the peaked hat. I think that the ones are refreshing that are in the window, painted on the window by whoever's doing their windows at House, which gets it a more playful, fun, womanly uh, perspective on it.
I
And
remember hearing something about the Salem High School logo and around this. I'd have to refresh my memory on that, but I think it's very consistent with what we're saying, that, you know, I think the old, or I guess the Salem High School logo, um what to a lot of people is a very offensive depiction of a witch. But I think like part of the community feedback was that there's a lot of like more positive images that could be looked at. And so that was part of the community conversation locally around that. So that's just thinking out loud, maybe that's something that we can also bring in uh, around the, you know, maybe somebody can speak to that process and whether the schools looked intentionally at that specific logo.
Yeah, and I just wanted to throw in that that I think that there are some similarities between the imageries of witches, which, you know, were traditionally women and, you know, who were ostracized for just being women or doing, you know, being at all outside of society. But there is a difference, I think, in that you know, that we're looking at a racial image. And I think that, you know, again, going back to power structures, going back to minorities, it's not exactly the same because these portrayals of witches and these people who are, you know, it's not a minority group. And then it comes down to, you know, again, looking at representations of you know, a dominant group of a minority is different than of two equal groups, right? Because then there's an unequal voice, right? Just as Spivak was saying. So that's something that we have to kind of take into consideration. It's not just a simple caricature of, you know, of a religion or of a practice. It's of a person and of their racial identity.
Yeah, and I think that is an important distinction, but I think that the similarity is that, you know, a witch is depicting a woman, right? Which for the context of this conversation would be also a protected class, you know, like, and so I think it's a different argument, but similar conversation around issues of representation. And I think that's why it's relevant to talk about for the purpose of this larger conversation. But yes, it's not a racialized image. Um, yeah, I guess just I wanted to name
Mhm.
that.
Also, just like if folks wanted to change that very, because like I have also read some history of children's books and the origins of the depiction of that long-nosed witch, and they are deeply anti-Semitic in nature, like that kind of caricaturizing of the bad village woman who lives in a hut outside of the main village town, that originate on a lot of like Churlin's stories from the 1600s and 1700s. So if someone wanted to have a dialogue about it, do a task force about it, like I would totally support that. Like, you know, I don't want to act like my problem is the most, or like my community's problem is the only important problem out there. And I would like join in. And that's why I hope people will join in. Like, we need to make this place more inclusive. And if that means that we change certain imagery, we change certain imagery. That would that make you feel safe? Would that make you feel included? Why not? So what, it takes time, you know, but that's my kind of my little nugget.
I do feel that the recurring theme that comes up for me again and again every single meeting is that I think the image that is problematic is the depiction of the person, right? There are a lot of things about what it is representing that we can lean into and preserve that is also coming up again and again in the feedback in the public input form, right? So I do feel like there's a lot of common underlying interests around preserving history, around inclusion, but I think like we can do it in a much better way that is not a stereotypical depiction of a nation man, right? And I think that's going to be what my sort of guiding light through these meetings is that I keep hearing this again and again, and I do believe there is a lot of common ground between the people who are saying no, don't change the seal, and the people who are saying yes, change the city seal. Like I think there's something there that we can preserve.
Yeah. And I think this whole process of finding out the realities behind the creation, the relationship between these people is really what's going to help us, well, enlighten that. I mean, something I'm curious to know, is it possible, would it have been possible for the selectmen in 1839 to have created a seal that of a depiction of someone else that was respectful? And how would that have gone down in 1839, not with 2025
Yeah, Roger
perspective?
Conant.
So what's that?
Roger Conant. They could have chosen someone specific.
No, no, oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Alphonse. I meant more, are they able to depict a people that is not their own and still be respectful?
Uh,
So I think what I would lean into is pictures of nature, right? Um, perhaps something that would have symbolized the maritime trade without depicting a person. I think that would have been a really uh timeless way to do it, right? You're honoring the trade, the maritime history, everything that we've been talking about without depicting a person. Um, you could also find many other symbols, because I think what I'm hearing you say, VJ, is you're making the argument, well, was it possible to make something that was not offensive at the time based on the conversation that we're having? And I think yes, like it is possible, right? um I think but again, I get context changes, even symbols change over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just considering the fact of, what it was they were representing, especially is some to consider. I mean, these traders made relationships with people, not products. And so, the success, and this is what what I'd hope we can find about, was that success based upon equal footing, or was there an unequal, you know, balance of power that would lean us to believe then that the depiction that they made in 1839 was actually a bit more, I don't know, insidious, let's say. That's where I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I have had some very good and powerful conversations with the Massachusetts tribe around the state seal slash state flag that have a lot of similar themes.
Uh-huh.
Um, and for them, the reason that, and again, this is just me relaying what I've heard, so I'm definitely not speaking for the tribe. This is just me kind of repeating what I've heard them say across meetings. Is really, that the, the way that the indigenous person is depicted, right? It's not the fact that an indigenous person is depicted, it's
Uh-huh.
how they're depicted, right? And they view it as a very submissive image, the fact that the figure is very passive, like I think for them the the issue of representation is different, right? Because it's more around like how the indigenous person is depicted. So perhaps that can be part of the conversation here, is there a way to depict an Asian person in a way that is appropriate? I don't know. What I've been hearing from this task force and from the presentations that we've heard so far is that um, at least the preference would be to choose another symbol altogether.
Can I add something? I want to sort of pick up on something that I think Rachel touched on in her presentation, but she didn't touch on how big it was, how huge, what a monumental thing it was at the time was Dana Schultz's painting of Emmett Till. That was a very long news cycle, and people were really upset about it. And when I was in art school, my painting teacher, Ellen Banks, was black. And she told me one time, because I painted a lot of people, and I painted a black person in a bar playing pool. And she pulled me aside. She said, "You must never paint anyone who's not your race." And I was crushed at the time. I was really hurt. And it took me a few years to grow up and see that she was right. I don't think it's like, I know what Dana Schultz was trying to do, but I'm one of those people that falls down on the side that that wasn't her area to of subject matter. And that let Kehinde Wiley paint it, or Amy Sherald, or somebody else who's a big name painter paint it, but not a white woman. And I think that this is the same issue, very same issue here. It's like it's really problematic for one race to create a depiction of someone from another race. It's never going to be. They don't have the insight that's necessary. She said that she was tender about it. You can't not be tender about the topic of Emmett Till, no matter who you are or where you're from. And so I really stand with Rachel about that. I think the figure is 99% of the problem with the seal. And if the figure is just even that, the rest of it's lovely.
I mean, I do think differently about that piece than you, Suzanne. I don't want to go as far as to say like that, oh, unless you're the race of that person, you can't you can't create art. Like I think that kind of goes a little bit too far. And from my view, like the example that I think just through my own experience being Mexican is Frida Kahlo. Like Frida Kahlo is a very controversial figure in Mexico for a lot of reasons, and yet she's widely celebrated worldwide. People, I
Right.
lived in Paris for a few years, and people in France are obsessed with Frida Kahlo and Mexican culture. And there's just a lot of exhibits with her art. And she was German. She was in mixed race, right? And arguably she was more European than indigenous, right? And I still think like her, like she represents something beautiful about Mexico. And yes, it's complex and it's not perfect, but that's part of what art is, right? And it also just personal identity exploration has just gotten so complex as things have evolved, right? Like I think people have a lot of exploration to do around like their own identity, and like people are not, like purely European, or, there's a lot of Afro-Latinos, for example. There's a lot of mixed race individuals in the United States. There's a lot of diversity. So I think uh, I wouldn't want to limit artistic expression, but I of course think that there's, as we've learned, stereotypical depictions that can have very negative that can be very negative and be very problematic for so many reasons, right? I think there's a distinction there.
Well, that's a really good point, because there is a cult of Frida, and but I think it's worth noting that most of her paintings are of herself. They're self-portraits, and somebody like Diego Rivera, who was her partner, and the way he depicts people, um, the way he depicts Mexicans, and so I think probably some of just getting into gender dynamics there, a lot of influence. He was a big presence. He took up a lot of space in the room. Had to have influenced her, even in the depictions of herself. But I think it's just a bad idea. It's not I won't say a bad idea. It's a good idea to proceed with care if you're going to do that. And I don't think
Yeah,
our seal
Absolutely.
was
Mhm.
proceeded. It went carefully down the road, taking the note of all the stones and rocks in the road.
yeah, and I guess one thing I just want to say is like with Dana Schultz, I think that it's a gray area. I have my own opinion. I think that just because for me it's more about thinking about because I'm an art I'm an art writer. I'm thinking about the art market and why she created that painting, and if it was for shock value, that's something that I have that's totally unrelated to a white woman portraying uh, a black man's death. Like that's it. It was more, I feel like, about shock value, but again, it's for me, it's not just about one person portraying another or one racial group portraying another. It's that should we again have a person and again a minority as the mascot of our city? Because then it's like, but why? Again, and why in 2025? I think so that's where I'm coming from, that it's just about like, is that morally, or I don't know, I shouldn't say morally, but is that like, does that feel good, like to have that person as our mascot? It just feels like tokenism, and like just personally it feel like, I don't know, just the thought of using any other, even if it was an Asian person, let's put anyone else, let's say it was like, a white man or a black child or whatever it is, and just be like, this is the mascot of the city of Salem. I'm just like, I think we can do better than that. I think that we shouldn't do that. That's how I'm feeling at the moment. But again,
Yeah, and I also don't want to like, even if I only have to look at the image once, like one, I notice it everywhere. I notice it as I drive around town. I notice it at any official building, um, or my garbage cans, right? And then like, or like I was just talking to my partner. I'm glad that we didn't. I was just talking to my husband that I'm so glad that we didn't get married in Salem. We didn't, because then that would be on a permanent paper that I had to officially carry. Like anyone who's gotten married in Salem has an official, like you have that seal on your paperwork. That I don't know, I it, anyway.
So,
I'm really grateful to Alphonse for putting that word mascot out there because it's perfect.
well, yes, and it's very highly relevant to the conversation regarding the national conversation that's happening about symbols and imagery in general, right? I think that relates to sports mostly, but not exclusively, right? And it's a lot of what we're considering here in this task force. Okay, so I think let's just being mindful of the time. It's 6:49, so let's wrap things up. Any last comments? Okay, great. So I accidentally put Gucci for another presentation, and I think accidental. But Bucci, just confirming, are you presenting in the next meeting?
No, yeah, that was an error.
Okay, perfect. So you're not presenting, period.
Correct.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you had signed up. Okay, so I'll remove you. And then for the July meeting, Aditi, are you all set to present?
I was gonna ask if my presentation could be moved to August.
Yes.
I just have some stuff going on that I need to take care of. I won't have the time.
Okay, perfect. And so Eileen Simons was scheduled to present. I will check, but I don't think that's happening because yeah, she appears to be out indefinitely, so I'll check in what's happening on that. So postponed until further notice, and so next meeting we'll just have Michael Fiener, unless there's another presentation scheduled. Anything
Regina,
else for new
can we
business?
just have one presentation per meeting? It seems like it's a lot. We're only
Yes.
supposed to go an hour and a half, and when we have two I can't imagine having someone going again after Rachel. Like, I think two, it's my overreaching a little bit. We could have just one person, and if we've got Michael Fiener for the next one, then that's perfect. Aditi would be in August.
Yes, that's a perfectly reasonable request and one that I'm happy to accommodate. Okay. Um, any other new business?
There's just a funny comment. The wrestling indigenous person with the white person is on the seal of Whitesboro, New York, and the Daily Show did a piece on it 9 years ago.
Can you add that to the optional folder, Dee?
Sure, sure,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Thank you. All right, so unless there's anything else, I can entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Can I get a
second.
second? All those in favor? All right, thank you, everyone. Good night.
Alphonse, we're gonna miss you.
I want to continue this conversation, VJ. We might have to.
I know.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.